talking about education today, and we're going to talk about the Gadsden City school system and the just kind of the education issues that we've got going on in our county, trying to get you guys information for you as you interact with candidates. It's one of the most important election years I think we've probably had, at least certainly in recent history. So we're trying to get information so that we get informed and understand what questions and we need to be asking. So if that's something that you find interesting and want to know more about, then certainly keep watching. We're going to hang out for just a minute and let people jump in. So if you're watching this afterwards, then fast forward on a couple minutes ahead, and we'll jump into it in just a second. For those of y'all that are jumping on live, I would appreciate it if you could hit that share button. Tag a friend. Everybody loves talking about education, right? That's always a fun thing. I don't know if we're going to have a quiz afterwards or not, but we'll see. But yeah, hit that share button. Tag a friend. Let somebody know. I know it's lunchtime for a lot of folks, so appreciate any time that you've got with us. And if you've got questions, then we will try and get to some of those. Yeah, if somebody would please put a comment in there that the sound is all good, that you can hear me, and then we'll start getting into it. Plus, it makes me make sure. All right, awesome. Look at that. Kelly says the sound is great. So yeah, a Monday morning. I imagine this is probably a pretty typical Monday morning for you guys.
Pretty much, pretty busy.
Well, I'm extremely appreciative that you guys are willing to come and take the time. This whole sitting down and doing Facebook Lives and all that kind of stuff has been a weird thing for the community. I think it's exciting. I know you've been on a couple in the community, and I can't tell you how just from a communicator, marketer perspective and being involved in all that I've been involved with this past year, I'm pretty stoked to see the number of groups of people that are putting the information on the internet. We can have a discussion about the impact of social media on society. That's a whole other conversation. But just making it easy for people to get information, and the internet is a good place to do it. I know everybody spends too much time on Facebook, so you might as well spend too much time learning about the community, learning about this kind of stuff. So guys, if you've got questions, I have a feeling this is going to kind of mainly be just a discussion with the three of us, but certainly if you've got questions, then throw it in there, or if you've got comments. So education as a whole is a huge topic of conversation, and we could go to a lot of different things. I know a lot of good stuff, and a lot of wish we had the resources to tackle stuff, and there's bad stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we could talk about in the education thing. So I want to kind of cage the conversation like we were talking about beforehand in terms of moving as we move forward as a community. I know to y'all, it doesn't feel like you're moving forward. You're doing the same thing y'all been doing for years. To a lot of newbies, I'll say, to guys like me that are starting to go, whoa, what the heck is going on? I think we've had a lot of discussion, and I've heard it for years. And of course, we've had it a lot through this past year about the discussion of jobs and job growth, and the concept of, we don't just need more jobs, we need better paying jobs. And obviously there's a huge piece of that in terms of having a top-notch education system that, number one, attracts people that want to build businesses organically, and grow, and, also to the large industry. They're looking at education systems to figure out, do they want to move there? Do they want to force their employees to put their kids in those school systems? And then, of course, are they getting the workforce that they need to support their endeavors? So that's kind of the context of the conversation that I think would be valuable with all that we've been talking about with Advanced Etowah. So guys, if that's if you've got questions like that, I know there's a ton of stuff going on. At the national level, lots of discussions, obviously, as we've gone through the pandemic and mask mandates versus not mask mandates versus, those are all incredibly important things to talk about, and valid. But I think in the context of where we're at with the discussions of how are we choosing city councilmen, how are we choosing, Board of Education members, how are we choosing mayors, I think that's really the scope of the focus of how can we educate people to choose that. City councilmen not really involved in figuring out whether our kids are wearing masks or not wearing masks, right? So, before everybody kind of goes down that rabbit hole. So that hopefully kind of cages everything and gets us going. So without any further ado, welcome to all of you guys. What do we got? About 21 of you. Awesome. I know Monday afternoon, you never know what you're going to get. But welcome to the Gadsden City School System Superintendent, Tony Reddick, and the chair of the Gadsden Board of Education, Mr. Alan Millican. I'm getting there. Christy gives me a hard time because I'm bad with names. So if you got any tips on how to remember people's names, I'm always looking for it. But no, I'm there. And I think it is worth noting that you are a retired judge. And so I think you bring some interesting perspectives in a lot of this. I'm sure you've got some pretty interesting stories from being a judge around here for a lifetime. So hopefully everybody's goal in the education system is to make sure that we get people that don't ever have to go before the judge. So where do we start with this conversation? I guess the first thing is let's take a quick second. And I know both of you have extensively long resumes. So in a minute to 2 minutes, can you kind of tell me who you are, give everybody context? There's a lot of folks like me that again, haven't been paying enough attention to really, who is the superintendent of schools and what's your background? And what are you, what kind of got you here, to Gadsden?
Great. So. Thank you for this opportunity. Well, this is my 34th year in the Gadsden City School System, having started in 1987 as a teacher at Litchfield High School, taught French and math there. I later taught Latin and art in some other schools in the system. Moved here from Boston, Massachusetts in 1987. Met my now wife of 38 years. We just celebrated our 38th wedding anniversary on Friday, as a matter of fact, in college at Talladega College, where I majored in math and minored in foreign language. So having had a chance to teach foreign language in the Gadsden City School System was a thrill to me. Served in just about every position: principal, assistant principal, coach, teacher, director of student services, EL coordinator, mentoring coordinator, and just 4 years ago, I had the pleasure of being selected as Gadsden City Schools Systems superintendent, where I've enjoyed these past 4 years. So that's where I'm from.
Okay. What's the? I guess what was the most fun of all those positions? Where did you find the most?
Every day is a fun day. Any of those positions. But to be frank with you, when I'm teaching, I'm having the most fun when I'm actually teaching students, when I'm actually engaging with students in an instructional setting.
Well, that's awesome. My takeaway from hearing that is listening to where your heart's at. I know obviously you probably spend a lot more time as a superintendent administering and dealing with all the employee issues and all the infrastructure. But somebody's got to do that, and who better than somebody that truly has the passion for reaching the kids and working with the kids. So,
absolutely.
Again, that's my takeaway. And just for you guys, I literally just met these gentlemen about 30 minutes ago. So I'm getting to know them. I'm sure a lot of you probably know them much better than I do. So, Mr. Millican.
Alan Millican here. Been practicing law for a little over 39 years. Half of that was as a judge. I'm a product of the Gadsden city school system. I used to laugh and tell folks I spent my winters at Sansom and my summers at Gadsden High, so I wasn't the most studious student in the world, but I managed through a lot of hard work to catch up and make a go of it. I've been the municipal judge here in Etowah County. I was Gadsden's municipal judge, Hoax Bluff municipal judge, the town of Steele's municipal judge, one of two judges in Etowah. I was the presiding circuit judge of Etowah County for 14 of the 17 years I was on the bench.
Okay.
I retired when y'all were talking about Monday and these days and all the work and stuff. I retired in 2017, so I have to ask my wife every couple of days what day it is because I don't really have a whole lot to get up. And I don't go to the office. Still got my law practice, but my son does that. And I retired in 2017, and I was one of the advocates of getting us an elected school board.
Okay.
And so I actually, with my children's prodding and the fact that I had 4 grandchildren in the public school system, I decided to run for the office, and I did that, and that was one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. I actually graduated from from high school, went into the service for a while, came home in 72, went to Harvard on the Hill, we called it back in them days, which is the junior college, and finished there with an associate's degree. I got a bachelor's degree from the University of Alabama through their extension programs, and my undergraduate degree was in secondary education. I actually wanted to be a teacher, but I got the opportunity to go to law school, and so I went to Birmingham School of Law. Took me a while to do it because it was a night law school. Passed the bar the first time around, started practicing with an old lawyer here in Gadsden called Rowan Bone, who taught me how to practice law.
All right.
Did that. And
well, that answers one of the questions that runs around in my mind. I know clearly why you do it for a job and a career and passion, but you're on a volunteer basis, and certainly there's plenty of people that would say you sound like a glutton for punishment. And of all the things to do in retirement, this seems like
it's been one of the most rewarding things
that's awesome.
that I could find to do. It keeps me active. It keeps me in the community. Trust me, it's not for the money or the trappings that goes with it. It's strictly to be there and to do everything I can. I come to the conclusion, because Mr. Reddick's got a story that outsurpasses mine, but if it wasn't for some individuals that helped me along the way and an education that I got, I figured out that education, first of all, it's one thing that nobody can ever take away from you.
Right.
I believe it is the pathway out of poverty.
Right.
I think it is the reason that it's public education is because everybody gets a shot at it. It's not how much money your parents have or who your family is or where you can go and things that you can do. It's a public education, and everybody needs an equal shot at that. And so if I can help in one little bit to try to make that a reality, then that's what I want to do. And the reason why I came here today is not to point fingers at folks and not to talk about issues that get you sidetracked, but to tell you the good things that we've done, even with the pandemic that was thrust upon us. You got to think about it. This new board that was the first elected board was sworn in April of 2019.
Right.
We went to one high school graduation right there in May. Okay. Then we came back in the fall and got ready to go to work and do what we could do to make ours the best system in the state. And the pandemic jumped all over starting in about February or March.
Well, you didn't have a pandemic response plan that you just pulled off the shelf?
Actually, we did have. We had developed one actually through the court system to get ready for this, and the school system had some things too. We did a few things different than a lot of the other systems did, but one of the things that I can really tell you about the board that we've got now is they have put personal ideas aside. We talk about things, we discuss them, we try to come to some kind of consensus that'll help everybody, and then we act in unison. Absolutely. And that's one of the best things about being on this board. And I did the same thing when I was on the bench, is you bring the best out of everybody and work together in these things.
So let's dive into and I don't know, whoever wants to kind of start it off. You kind of open the door there in terms of the good things that are going on. Let's talk about our local education system. What's going on in education? I'm going to jump right into a very general question of, what are your views on what's going on? What could be better? However you're looking at it, of preparing our kids for the workforce of the future, and particularly in the impact of the education on pulling business into here, preparing kids to work for those companies. Again, I don't know enough, which is why I'm having this conversation for you guys to jump into.
Two of the main things, or the main thrusts that I've really been impressed with and come to realize is our dual enrollment program that we've got, as well as the tech program that we've got set up, and our partnering with the college as far as those goes.
Okay.
What folks need to realize is the board's role and Mr. Reddick's role is he is the foot on the ground, okay? He can tell you about all the things.
I got you.
It's our superintendent's responsibility for the day-to-day operations of the school, and he does an outstanding job of it. But all of the programs that we've got, you got to realize, first of all, we've got 4,700 plus students in the school system. We've got, it says 650 plus, but it's nearly 800 if you count the additional teachers and everybody that we've got that he has to manage. And all of these programs, we offer multiple diplomas, not just the career tech or the advanced diploma, but we offer multiple diplomas. We offer so much to get our children ready for the future. We've got marketing that we teach. We've got the tech prep and engineering, marketing, occupational stuff. It's just unreal, the things that we got. Mr. Reddick, you can probably tell them more about that than I could.
Yeah, I think to echo that, we have to look back to when we first started having discussions about workforce development, and it goes way back in early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where tech prep was the first curriculum that we started in the school system to advance technological education and prepare for workforce development. We're doing things like World of Work right now. As a matter of fact, I think it's next week or the week after. We've got our 8th graders and our 11th graders going to Oxford to really see how industry works, a lot of hands-on stuff for industry. But we have traditionally had one of the largest or the greatest academic requirements in the country. In fact, we were having a discussion the other day about my staff, my director's staff, about the requirements for graduation. But going back to 1996, for example, when my first year as a principal, we went to block scheduling, which was intended to help enhance our ability to offer career tech classes. And of those 32 units that students were able to take, they were required to pass 30 of them. And that created a little bit of a problem for some students who couldn't meet that standard. And so as we move forward, some now 30 years later.
I won't tell you what I was doing in 1996.
Well, the standards are still there. We realize that we've had to make some adjustments from here to there, from time to time, for various reasons. I think the most amazing thing that we've done since I've been in my tenure was, of course, consolidating the 3 high schools. And there was some opposition to that because there was concern about local tradition. And of course, we felt like we could just take our tradition to a new school. Thus Titans, take it to a new school, Titan. And we have thrived. There's a lot of concern about loss of student population, but, we've lost industry. We've had students who have gone to school in other cities and opted to stay in those cities to work, especially if you're talking about Huntsville, UAH, Alabama A&M, and various other schools to work there. We would love to have those students to come back home.
Right.
Now, some of those in the medical profession and the legal profession, they have come back home.
Okay.
The technological careers, aren't as abundant here in Gadsden as they are in Atlanta, in Birmingham,
right.
in Huntsville, for example. So we're hoping that through our curriculum, we can train students and in some kind of way assist them in getting credentials and making them feel confident about coming back to Gadsden to work, even if it's in an entrepreneurship role.
Right.
So we're doing quite a few things, working with our dual enrollment programs. I think one of the most fascinating things to me is that, we got to get kids to college first. We understand that not all kids are cut out for college, but just got a report that just teaching kids and their families to fill out the financial aid form, FAFSA, we've improved by 123% over the previous year.
Nice.
And it's those types of efforts that we've got going on in our schools that I think are going to help us to meet the desires that we have for our kids.
Well, as you talk about that and keeping kids back, and we've gone through the pandemic. I think a huge conversation that we're having. Obviously got the Great Resignation that is occurring. A lot of companies that are starting to go, this remote working thing, which I personally, I think we were already on a trajectory. Again, as a guy that has, when I was downrange doing stuff with the Navy, everything was remote working.
Navy man?
Yes, sir.
Me too.
Oh, nice.
I was a corpsman once upon a time.
Well, so this concept of remote working a company is nothing new, and as you look at the way the internet's going, and then the pandemic occurred, and I think it is literally just the exponential curve to change the complete. I guess I'd say it's pushed a lot of the old time business owners going, well, that's not so bad, and maybe even I saved a few bucks because I don't have to pay for office space. Have you guys talked about that? Been thinking about that at all in terms of specific to Gadsden? We
have learned so much since the pandemic because we were the ones that was thrust into it, like throwing cold water on you. Do we go back to school? Do we try remote learning? Do we get do we have Wi-Fi? Do we have the capabilities of getting to our students, even though we can't get them to the classrooms? And so we've had to, through Dr. Asbury and our tech staff, we've had to really think outside the box and setting up Wi-Fi hotspots and things where the kids could go to even if it's in the parking lot of the school. We've had to, move and adjust and dodge and weave. And so, we're having to make those same adjustments as everybody else is. And we're rising to the challenge. Absolutely. It doesn't always work. And the thing was, just like the pandemic, when you see the flow charts, when it rises and then falls and it rises and falls. And so what happens is each time it falls, we get together and try to think what didn't work this last time when it was on the rise, and how can we make it work a little bit better this next round. And so we had to adjust, and that's
well. And so I don't know. Maybe you disagree with what I'm necessarily saying, but I think the world has fundamentally changed in how we do things. So and I've thought about. As a guy that, when I was selling boats at Bucks Island, I'm selling bass boats. I got guys that are driving up out of Birmingham that are, there's a software engineer out of Birmingham, making $180,000 a year. And he lives in Birmingham, but his passion and what he lives for is fishing. So, the reason he's living in Birmingham is because he's got to report to the office every day. But come Saturday, he's hooking up and hitting Neely Henry or heading up to Guntersville, and that's what he does for a living. And he's willing to invest, $70,000 in a boat to go do it, which I'm happy to sell him. But I think about that software engineer going, why is he not now? All of a sudden, if his company's going, well, hey, if we see you once a month, that's great, but you go work wherever you want to work. Now all of a sudden, it gets real interesting. I think for a community like ours, where it's okay, well, I can buy a very affordable house and be right on the water. That's the context of is that, I don't know. Maybe I'm going too far in terms of.
That's part of our technology program. Is that we're teaching digital design, we're teaching computer maintenance, we're teaching an introduction to networking. We're trying to teach those skills, like Mr. Reddick was saying earlier. It's not everybody that wants to go to college, but somebody's got to maintain the system, and so we're trying to offer those.
That's actually. there was somebody asked a question here. Let me bring that up on the screen. Which do you think would be better, taking a trade or college? I know that's a hotbed topic.
And that's a hot topic, and that's about parental choice. I think you have to take into account that there are countless stories about students who have gone on to college and had some fantastic 4-year degrees at some major colleges and universities around the country, and have come back and found some difficulty in earning a living wage, basically.
Right.
So I think it's important, whatever decision you make career-wise, that you do take that into account, where the jobs are. And nowadays, tech companies are booming.
Right.
Everybody wants to work at Google. I think they have the most fun. They have more fun than
I
anybody.
think they have forced naps.
Yeah,
I mean, who doesn't want to work someplace that has forced naps?
When you look at college, do you look at tech? Do you look at trades?
Yeah.
They all have their place. I know when I was going to college, I was working in the trades.
Yeah.
I had another friend of mine that came home from the service same time I did. While I was going to the junior college, taking every course I could get, he was going to the trade school, taking air conditioning, taking brick masonry, taking carpentry. And he was just
so what I'm hearing is and I think kind of getting to the crux of the conversation, just in kind of getting to know you as a superintendent and the way you're thinking about things. You're not 100% college. That hey, we need to. We need to have we need to prepare people to do the right things that they want to do.
Right. Imagine this, and I've shared this story before. I remember having to replace a washer and dryer in my home because the dryer wasn't working. The short story is simply this. After having spent the money for a brand new washer and dryer, it was determined that all I needed was a $2 110 watt part. And so.
And if people think that there's a stigma because you go one path instead of another, every time I used to be in charge of the jury when they would come in, I would bring people from all walks of life and put them in the room, and I would tell them, if anybody says anything to you during this conversation that you don't understand, please raise your hand and let me explain it to you, because it doesn't mean that they're any smarter than you. Right. It just means that they use different terminology. They live in different environments. So, when you I tell him you could take a pupwooder and put him in a surgical setting, and he doesn't know the difference between a scalpel and a forceps. And you take that brain surgeon and put him on the back end of a skidder in the middle of the woods with a pupwooder, and he don't know the front from the back. It doesn't mean one's smarter than the other. It just means that they are in different environments and use different terminology. And we get caught up in that in our real life. We think, well, if you don't go to college, you're not as smart as the next fellow. That's not so. Yeah. Just like Mr. Reddick would say, that $2 part that guy knew how to do, it saved him.
And I'll definitely say I'm a big fan. I've been following Mike Rowe and the work he's doing with Micro Works. I think he brings up a very solid conversation for us to have as a community, and I can see that. And that was one of the nice things about the Navy and the career in the Navy is looking at. It takes all kinds. And I ran into plenty of guys that, they wanted nothing to do with being managers. Yeah. They wanted nothing to do with being leaders, but they could keep my 1960s era aircraft airborne. Right. And it blew my mind because I ain't got a clue on how to do that. I just know how to go break it for them and make them mad at me. So I think I'm a big fan of that concept. And, I think we as a community or as a nation really are kind of getting to the point of like, ooh, skilled labor, and we've had those discussions with some of the employers around here, in terms of, what we need, for actual skill sets to do the stuff that we need to do. And it becomes very easy to forget that even if you talk about all this tech, and that's obviously been a sexy thing and a lot of money to be made there, but the towers that provide the capability, all those lines and all that kind of stuff. You don't need a college degree to go out there and get out there, and we got to have that, for me to be able to do this.
Called a plumber lately, have you?
Yeah.
You,
Well, and
if you can get them to come.
so my wife actually works for one of the local plumbing companies with Mansion Plumbing, so yes, and of course, when I came here, and one of the things, we've had a lot of discussions about the airport and the aviation industry. But as a general manager out at International Jets, I mean, we got aircraft mechanics that, they're starting at $24 an hour. And those are not guys that have, and they're getting, upwards into the 6-figure incomes, because they know how to work on airplanes. Because, if you're flying in an airplane, you want the guy to be competent that's fixing it, because you can't pull over on the side of the road when it breaks.
One of the things that we want to do more than anything else is to have our children prepared for whatever it is that they want to do.
Right.
If it's tech, we want to be able to offer them a pathway to do that. If it's college, we want to be, have a pathway for them. Whatever they need to succeed, we want to try to give it to them.
So the way I would phrase that is options. You always want to have and build a system that provides as many options, and that you're not limiting the options that your kids have. And obviously, you mentor them through figuring that out, because I think if nothing else, I think we figured out as a community, or at least this is the way I think about it. If you can teach work ethic, if you can teach somebody to apply themselves, look at Steve Jobs. Look at guys that have, 0 college degree, and they know how to go make something. And so those options to be provided. And so what I would ask is, do you guys feel like here in Gadsden that you've got the resources? And I know that it's probably the same thing with any answer we'd have from the military of like, we never have enough resources. Mm-hmm. But genuinely, what's the conversation about? Do you feel like you have the resources to support, the coordination and collaboration to develop those options that you want to be able to provide for those kids?
Is that the trick question that we've been waiting to get? So because let me, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Reddick in just a minute. But I want to say a few things to get you on the right path with that. We never have enough. That's true. You're absolutely right. If we had everything we wanted, we'd still want more. That's human nature, I guess. And I'm not here to point fingers at anybody or to say anything negative about the process. What I would say, and Mr. Reddick hit earlier when he used a phrase, and he said parents' choice, which is, who can argue with the terminology of parents' choice? But there's a lot of legislation going around right now that says parents' choice. Look past the rhetoric and look and see what it actually does as far as taking money away from the public education. But what I would like to see more than parents' choice is parents' involvement.
That's right.
Because no matter what we do with those kids for those 7 or 8 hours that we've got them, at school, then the parents, the family setting outside of that school system's got them twice as much. And I would, we welcome parental involvement. Mm-hmm. We've got all these paths for these children to take, but we need the guidance that only that parent can give. So that is more important than any other tool that we've got, whether it be the financial assistance, even with less money, if we've got more involvement, we can make headway. So one of the things that I wanted to say to everybody today is, if you have a child in school, get involved. Come call us if you've got a question, if you've got a problem. I've never once not called anybody back that's called me about an issue that's coming before the board.
Okay.
And that was...
Yeah. And let me extend that from parent involvement to parent engagement. There are times when parents are involved. It's something as simple as attending your child's ball game or delivering lunch to your kid at school. That's involvement. But engagement incorporates giving parents an opportunity to learn some of the same skills that their students have an opportunity to learn in school, and especially in the computer realm.
Right.
So we want parents not just to stop by. We want them involved in or engaged rather in the instruction. So we have several programs where we do that. A lot of them are funded by grants Okay, and so that's something that we're big on. I think we receive maybe about $1.2 million in grants each year, spread all around. And so when we can have the parents more engaged in teaching them how to teach their children, I think that pays a few more dividends. But just saying that parental involvement is key. But if we can get them involved and then have them to step up and take part in the instruction, that's going to help even more. And so, again, going back to the career tech issue, we have pursued, again, an opportunity to invite students age 18 to 24 back to the high school in the evening to learn welding, for example.
Okay.
Now, in some of those cases, that 24-year-old might be the parent of let's say a 6-year-old, first grade.
Right.
But we want them to be a part of our school system as more than just parents, but individuals who are going to sow into the community because they've learned a particular skill or task, and they've gone out into that community and said, hey, listen, look what I'm doing at, Gadsden City High School or Gadsden Middle or any other school for that matter. And so I think that is essential to our growth as a school system, that all of our stakeholders have an opportunity to be a part of the development within our system.
All right. So one question, as I'm hearing you throw out some numbers about the grants and all that kind of stuff, I am kind of curious and I hate to put you on the spot. I imagine you have some number. What is your overall budget that you're kind of working with as the Gadsden City School?
Well, our school budget is, I think it's up to 56 million, 56, 57 million. And that's a lot of that's grown. Typically it's about 54 million. And what I like to emphasize about our budget is that is a checking account, not a savings account. Okay.
Right.
That's what it costs to run our school.
And one other thing, let me add to that about the budget and the amount, because first thing when you say 50 million, but
I know it sounds
there's
like a lot.
also a loan that goes along
That's
with
right.
that is accountability.
That's
and
right.
what people
That's
need
right.
to understand is, we said the terminology a while ago, grants. Okay, when we receive those grants, federal grants, those things are mandated of all as to what we can do with that money specifically.
Right.
They're also we're audited by the federal government on those grants to make sure that we complied with those. We're audited by the state. We're audited by ourselves each month. One of the things that the board does is get the
so the reason I asked that question is for some context. For everybody and understanding, because most of us, and I know most people around here don't deal with budgets that big. That sounds big, but from a guy that was on a carrier strike group staff, that's pennies. I mean, like literally, that's one flight. Right. So understanding the concept, to your point of it's a checking account, having $50 million, or a $50 million cost and budget doesn't mean that you're flush with cash. Exactly. It just means that you're having to manage because you have a lot, back to the thousands of kids, the hundreds of
800 plus employees.
So that was not that
800.
That's what I want to try and get people to understand when they hear that is that's not oh God, they've got so much money. I mean, I'd be curious if you know.
We are mandated by the state to keep a how much is the reserve? Well,
the state requires 1 month reserve.
1 month reserve. We have to have that much to operate, and it goes. I mean, it's right on the threshold. It'll go up, and then it'll go down just a little bit, and so we're required to maintain a certain level by the state.
And that's so. I guess what's another comparable schools like. I don't know, like a Huntsville school system and their budgets, or, that's if y'all don't have a number right off the top of your head, but I would encourage folks to go.
I can tell you this much: not only when you're talking about the budgets and the number of people that we have, one of the reasons the state allocates us a certain number of teachers, okay, and then they pay monies for X number of. We've got about 50. Because I think I actually looked at the numbers today before I came down here, that we do above and beyond what the state gives us. And those are for our fine arts programs.
Right,
those are for these other programs that we offer that we wouldn't have the ability to provide if we didn't do that. So we go above and beyond that because we even teach German. We teach, we've got foreign languages. We got strings. We've got all these things that bring
I've worked with a lot of Germans. They speak really good English.
Works
My
both
German
ways.
not so good.
Not so good.
But yeah, I mean that budget issue, and I guess a big hot topic that we've had, and I'm gonna take us there again. I know we're not trying to point fingers and cause a bunch of issues, I guess, but I think it is a very valid conversation for us to have. Is the fact that they did not pass any funding out of the city budget for the school, and the very simple understanding that I have of the explanation was basically that you've got plenty.
Not true.
And so what I as Advanced Etowah, and as we talk through the issues, whether you have plenty or not, and we talk about industrial recruiting, the folks in the C-suite at a Fortune 500 company looking to build a new facility someplace, mm-hmm. What does that even send that you didn't give $1
what
to
message does it
to the,
send?
yeah, what just the apparent, whether you do or don't need money, that to me seems like that's kind of weird. And so I don't know, again, I don't want to go fisticuffs here in against the city council, but that maybe explaining.
First of all, I would say this: city council don't make the budget. Okay, they pass the budget, but they don't make the budget. They have discretionary funds, and they have been generous with those in the past. The first year that I was on the board in 2019, that fall, when the city did their budget, you don't hold me to the exact numbers, mm-hmm. but I want to say that they gave us. Or funded us to the tune of about $1.2 million or something like that. The next year, I think it was 900 and something. It went down. Mm-hmm. It's last year we got 0, but we did go back and they did give 180
and
for some art
that's
programs,
certainly
and that's great.
That's certainly worth mentioning.
As a lawyer and as a judge, I'm used to an adversarial proceeding, and so, but I've never seen nothing like this before, and I don't understand it a lot of times, and I'm just going to go out there on a limb. Mm-hmm. And I know the city council. I take that back. Johnny Cannon grew up across the street from me. I knowed him all his life pretty much. Kent Back I've known through civic organization and everything. He's a good man too. Thomas Worthy was a police officer when I was a municipal judge at Gadsden. I don't know a couple of the others. Ben Reed lives down the street from me. He's a neighbor. They all are good folks, and I'm not going to point fingers at
right.
And Sherman, I've known all my life. If I had a problem with any of them, trust me, I call them. I do, and I tell them what I think. But it don't, sometimes they have other priorities and they have other things that are going on, and I'm not going to say bad things about any of them.
So from the boots on the ground, the guy that's got to take that money and the resources and actually get it into practice. Yeah. What are your thoughts? And again, I don't know. I mean, I acknowledge I don't know enough about this, which is why I'm doing this to realize that I want to understand is that appropriate? Is it not appropriate? Is it something? I mean, is it something you've seen in the past, not seen in the past?
Never seen it before, really. Let me echo this, that judges mentioned about the teacher units, for example, and we're paid from the state from the teacher unit, but we have like 50 staff members who we don't receive funding for, including fine arts, and our fine arts program is second to none in the state of Alabama. We have prided ourselves on having a fantastic fine arts program for years in the city of Gadsden, and so in regards to other systems that we've been compared to, maybe Oxford stands out, maybe further south, someone like Saraland, possibly even Alabaster. And we realize that those cities get quite a bit of money from local revenue because there's a lot of commercial business there in the taxes. But in either case, the school system success is very much dependent upon local funding.
Right.
I won't give you a bunch of the numbers. I'll just get them all mixed up here. But in terms of local funding versus state funding versus federal funding, the local funding is very essential.
Okay.
And so to have realized such a loss just in this past year based on the notion that we have plenty, it's kind of a misnomer.
Okay.
And let me add this for the city too, because I want to make sure everybody understands where we're coming from and what we do get from the city, because I don't want to short anybody on this deal.
Right.
When we built this new high school, we floated a bond issue for about $26 million or something like that, and the agreement was the city would pay half of that bonding issue, and the school board would pay half. And they are still doing that. We owe about 10 more years. It'll pay off in 2033. So the city does, even though they didn't give us any money for the school system, whatever it is, they did spend approximately $900 and something thousand last year, this year, every year. I know the 1 cent sales tax is where it comes from.
No, so you're talking about the bond.
Yes.
That is. There's some discussion about refinancing that, right?
They wouldn't do it. See, the thing is when the bond issue came up at the time that they built the new school, the Board of Education legally didn't have the ability to float the bond issue ourselves. So we used, the city did it for us. And the agreement was that they would pay half and we would pay half. They put a 1 cent sales tax out there for, I think the mayor named about 4 or 5 different things, and education was one of them that money was going to be used for.
Okay.
So last year, when the interest rates bottomed out and everything, we had several lending institutions that approached us about refinancing that bond issue, and it was going to save about, the interest rates were so, just like refinancing the house. It was going to save about $2 million. $1 million off the city side, $1 million off of our side. Now, we could have done one or two things with that money. We could have drawn it off, used it, or paid down the debt. My suggestion was pay down the debt, because I'm physically responsible. You take that $1 million, you spend it, you still owe it. Something else comes along, and it's gone. Pay down the debt. They didn't want to do that. I'm not, again, pointing fingers saying good, bad, or indifferent. And they say, well, that's part of our debt structure. Well, when you got a debt structure that is paid every month on time and hadn't missed a payment and all like that, that makes your credit stronger. It don't make it weaker. It didn't happen.
Well, and I know, and guys, if you kind of want more on that, I know Councilman Worthy brought up some good questions about that during the budget process, and go back and watch the city. It's live. There's a recording on their YouTube, and with some interaction with Miss Rosser, in at least her perspective of why she wasn't able or not able to do that. And I know Mr. Worthy seemed pretty frustrated with that.
And two, they have spent, in the past with the help with the stadium and the help with the tech building. I mean, we didn't come here to point fingers. That what I said from the get go.
And that's, educating us. I mean, again, we hear snippets,
right? That's the truth of the matter is, I tried, and it didn't work. So
and that's unfortunately we're a headline culture now, and we won't, that's why I want to. All right, well,
that's why I came back and said what they did do for us, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm giving one side of this story, because I am not. I'm just, when you can save $1 million off of something, that's a lot of money to me, and to a lot of other folks.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I see somebody made a comment of thank you for doing this. I'm learning a lot about our school system.
Can I explain one other thing?
We're achieving our objective, which is great.
One other
Go
thing
ahead.
too, I want to about the board, and a lot of people have a misconception of what the city board can do and can't do. And I explained this to you earlier. There's 4 basic things that the City Board of Education can do without question. One is to hire an attorney to represent the board, which we did that when we first came on.
And in full disclosure, you've got, who is the attorney for the board?
Christy Knowles.
Christy Knowles. Okay.
But we interviewed several different law firms.
Obviously Christy's sat in that seat a whole lot with me over the last year, and so we want to make sure
nothing to do. We don't have anything to do with that. That's just her firm represents the board. Second thing is we can hire a chief financial officer, which is our CSFO or CFO.
Right.
Our accountant. We can hire that accountant. The third thing is we can set policy. In other words, we can lay out long-term goals that we want to achieve and those type things, and set policies for the operation of the system. Policies. The fourth thing that we can do is we can hire the superintendent. Mr. Reddick is our superintendent. Once we hire the superintendent, and I'm not shifting the blame to him or buck to him or congratulations to him or whatever, He runs the day-to-day operations of the school.
That's correct.
Of the system. We don't have
Right.
the authority to hire and fire. We don't have the authority to do. In fact, we can only take action as a board on the items that the superintendent presents to us and gives us his recommendation.
So if
to
somebody
do.
if somebody wants a job, they need
want
to
a
hit you
job,
up. That's
see
what he's
him.
saying.
That's exactly what I said earlier. I can't get him to hire you or fire
What's
you.
your phone number?
But that's kind of the way that this. And see,
Yeah.
it's hard, especially in coming from the presiding circuit judge of the county to sit in a chair and I can't tell everybody what to do anymore. It drives me crazy. But all I can do
I
is,
wouldn't have gotten that impression whatsoever.
well,
So
I can suggest strongly, But again, going back to our board, I'm here today with Mr. Reddick. I don't speak for the board. I'm speaking for myself.
Right.
But we have a great board. We have three of our members came back: Mike Haney, Reverend Huff, and Andre Huff, and Nancy.
who is
Stewart.
he's watching? I see him on. He's made a
Is
couple
he?
comments. Yeah,
So they've been there before.
probably
so
making
they
sure that you're saying the right
I hope
things.
so. And then Nate Carter, a pharmacist, local, a great guy. Mark Dayton, Andrea Reed,
Adrian.
and myself, Adrian. We communicate with each other, not outside of the board meeting as opposed to a sunshine violation law.
Right.
But we get along good and we talk about things, and,
Right.
and there's no subject that we won't talk about or discuss or do. And so that has really worked out well.
Well, let me look in here and see. I think there was. Yeah, I think that's a good question to maybe shift gears just ahead. I think we've been at a fairly high view, and we're talking about job growth and all that kind of stuff. Talk about elementary school and being on grade level. Where are we at these days?
Well, the biggest issue regarding elementary schools has to do with third grade in particular.
Reading.
And reading in particular.
Okay.
Obviously, the Literacy Act is going to require for us to make sure that students are reading at grade level and starting with third grade. Now, that's been extended for a couple of years in terms of the requirement being met. But we're working diligently to make sure, as we always have, to make sure that students are reading on level. The thing that I think needs to be emphasized, however, is that, we, and especially as it relates to, other school systems, I've always argued that our teachers around the state of Alabama, they're educated primarily at Jacksonville State University at the graduate level, some other colleges, universities, some come from out of town, and we teach from the same curriculum as everybody else in the state of Alabama. Okay. So there's not a major issue with our students performing on grade level. Where there is an issue, it has more to do with reinforcement. Now, this is not to cast aspersions on any family, any parent, or anything like that. But whatever we teach on a regular basis during the school day needs to be reinforced.
Yes.
Now, to combat those issues where there may not be enough reinforcement, we have after-school programs, we have summer programs, we have plenty of opportunities for enrichment so that any kid who is, lagging a little bit has an opportunity to catch up. It's just like the old peach basket. It's full of peaches, and if you want one, just go in and grab it.
Yep.
If it doesn't taste real good, toss that one away, get you another one. I'm not that great with those types of analogies, but that's kind of the way we look at it. So grade level, we're fine. Are there some kids who have fallen a little bit behind? Yes, there are some who have, but we try to look at why that may have occurred. It could have to do with demographics, geographics, you name it. We contend that all of our elementary schools are being taught the same way. Now, as I said, we know that of the 8 elementary schools that we have, that there are at least a couple of schools, will go unnamed, whose students perform a little better than students at those schools. That doesn't mean that in those other schools, there aren't some students who perform as well as those students in the other 2 high-performing schools.
Right.
And so we try to address that again with that parental engagement model we talk about, or parental involvement, and by providing resources for those students who want to take advantage of it.
So, and in full disclosure, I've got 2 girls that went to your Brown. That's only part of the Gadsden City. Right. My girls are now in Rainbow Middle and at Southside High. And I will to take a step back. my wife, we've been married over 20 years. She's got a child development background. She worked in preschool. As I dragged her around the country, it was a good job fit and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know anything about kids, especially when we started having kids. And the remarkable thing about teaching, like, we underestimate how much kids can learn at younger and younger and younger ages. And I mean, I wouldn't have known any insight, any knowledge I have in any of that is all because my wife showed me. And it's been remarkable to see, but a lot of that comes to, and back to the discussion of parents and their interaction, with their kids and preparing them, particularly as you talk about the basics of things like reading and all that kind of stuff. So let me roll that into the discussion of parents' choice as we have the discussion of, I guess what the best way to put it would be the equality of schools or the equity of the school systems. And, is there an argument there going for the parents' choice?
Okay, well, let me chime in and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Reddick.
Yeah.
Parents,
I'm genuinely asking the question.
Sure.
I don't know.
Parental choice, parents' choice is the best catchy terminology I've heard that come down the pike in a long time. Who can argue with parents' choice?
We win votes with headlines.
Sure, parents' choice. Parents' choice means that you can get approximately $6,000 from the state government out of the educational trust fund and go teach your child at home if you want to and keep that money, or put him in private school and keep that money. It's the same thing that's been argued since
That's
Brown
it.
versus
That ain't enough money.
Since Brown versus no, it's not. Since Brown versus Board of Education. I mean, when you start taking money out of and where's the accountability? Right. Where are the standardized tests that they have to do? Right. Where is the Okay. So no, I'm for parents' choice as far as choosing what curriculum your kids are going to follow and your involvement in the school and those type things. But the legislation that they have proposed that's come out of Calhoun County, no.
Now, I will ask this question. Are you, for parents to this point that have chosen homeschooling, you're not saying that you're not in support of homeschooling?
No, we have programs that support
homeschooling. I just as I listen to that, I could hear somebody misinterpreting what you're saying.
They're misinterpreting it.
Yes.
Because what I'm talking about is the legislation
it's the internet. You gotta sometimes you gotta just address the okay. Hey, don't take that as
no. That's not what I meant at all.
All right.
In fact, my children themselves, I had one when I was growing up, or my boys was growing up. I had one that was both of them were in the public school system. They were in private school for a while, both of them were, and then they were in public school for a while, and then it accommodated one and didn't accommodate the other one, and so one went back to private school.
So let's take that in the context of for parents that are going to keep the kids in school, and is this legislation, is this opening up the door that now I can send my kid to any school in the community? I mean, does that include like sending to county schools? Or is that going to be strictly within the district?
Yeah, no.
I don't think so.
I'm not educated enough on this legislation.
Right. I think the main issue with parent choice really has to do with that, ciphering money from public education and offering it to parents for private education. Okay.
So we're talking about like sending them to Westbrook.
Send them to a
point blank. I mean,
sure, exactly.
I mean, or some other private.
And one of mine went to
Westbrook.
Westbrook.
And this is not about.
No, it's not about the school.
This is
about
just
the money.
About us trying to understand the issues in a deeper, beyond headline.
The question to me is always, well, what is? And I hate to use this term as well, but what are the parents running from? And when I say running from, I'm saying, okay, if I'm in a school where I think it's a low performing school, the question is whether or not the school is low performing in terms of its instructional staff and its administration versus the population of students who don't perform as well as students at other schools.
Right.
So when you talk about parent choice in private schools and even some charter schools for that matter here, the standards just aren't the same. You don't offer the same curriculum, for example. And the biggest question regarding that is, especially as it relates to charter schools, is who's going to be allowed to attend those types of schools. So the parent choice we're talking about now, it really has to do with, homeschooling your kids. And the question again is who is the qualified and or certified instructor who's going to be schooling your kids. There are a lot of platforms out there for education that are electronic in nature, where parents get to, their children get to stay at home and learn. Okay, but what's that going to do for their socialization skills? How's that going to improve their social skills? Okay, and my way of thinking is that if parents are engaged and or involved, well, they have the opportunity to share with us what they think is in the best interest of their child. Now, at the same time, all children are different. Families are different demographically, geographically, whatever have you, religiously, ethnically, and so on, okay? Right. So in public school, going back to the 1600s, there was a purpose for public schools. And public schools have grown. One of the things that we are quite familiar with is that the general curriculum of public schools hasn't changed in 250 years. Okay, so we have adapted some things.
So we got some new math. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I still teach them the most.
Sorry, I can't resist. But okay, yep.
Yeah.
So,
but that's different. I'm a math instructor, and I.
So it hadn't changed.
Just style has changed.
Right.
Let's say,
right.
The new math. I remember in 1974, I think it was we got new math. Well, it doesn't seem like new math now. Once you learn what it is, it's just math.
Right.
I tell our students that I tutor in mathematics that all math is simple arithmetic as long as you know the rules and the formulas, basically. Now, there may be some math instructors who would disagree with that, but from my experience, that's what I find to be true. I tutor ACT prep on Sundays, for example, and I have students who come in and I have to tell them to go back to 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th grade to recall what your teacher taught you then in order to do what appears to be more complex math problems.
Right.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the math. It's just the text that's more complex. So we have to teach them to draw a correlation between numeracy and literacy. Once they develop that skill, well, it becomes simple math again.
Yeah,
that's not part of his job description, by the way, either. He teaches the ACT prep and does.
And I think that goes back to when we first got started and what's the most enjoyment that you've had.
That's how I get that.
And you scratch that itch, which is awesome. For one thing, nobody gets into being an educator to make a fortune. Right. It's definitely the right people that are doing it and are doing it for the right reasons. Right. So as that discussion of the style of education, the format of going to schools and all that kind of stuff. I think there's obviously some discussion is now, we've kind of opened up the virtual world and the application of technology, and what are your thoughts? And I guess this is kind of the way we'll close it off, because I think we're right at an hour. We'll kind of close it off with that concept of, is there a need to, I don't want to say adapt, because that kind of sounds like it's a requirement, but maybe it is that we change, whether it's the format or the way we're interacting, the access. And because I will say, as a guy who, there's a lot of online resources for me, obviously far beyond the grade school side of things. But if I want to go learn something, if I want to learn how to build a better website for a client, if I want to learn tips and tricks, I'm not going to go back to a college to somebody that hadn't actually been doing it. I want to hear the video of the guy.
YouTube's a miracle worker.
YouTube is, and so, where do you kind of, and I think, well, I don't know. I'm just going to open it up with that question of what do do you see a need to kind of change, do things differently, adapt?
The curriculum, first of all, you need to realize, is set by the state. Right. So the curriculum is set by the state, not by us. The administration of it is us. The additional things that we provide is where we go above and beyond, and that's with the extra classes, extra teachers, different subject matters.
Fortunately, we've got state representatives that are going to be elected this year.
I hope they're listening to this, and that's one of the things when you decide who you vote for, and I'm not telling you one way or the other.
Right.
Those are the questions you need to be asking them.
Okay.
It's what is your position on this and get some
and there's
some
that
feedback.
that's a nugget right there as that's a core piece of why I want to have these conversations, for the so what when I step in that voting booth, or as I'm researching and learning from these candidates. It's one thing somebody says, I'm pro-education. Well, of course you're pro-education.
But you know what the bottom...
What exactly does that mean to you? And what are you going to go to Montgomery and talk about from the education standpoint?
And
So
the basic principle of, in my humble opinion, the basic thing that you can teach a child to get them ready to learn whatever subject they want to is reading. Mm-hmm. If they can teach them two things, how to read and read well, and where the library's at. They can figure it out. And it's all online now anyway.
Yep.
It's, you can go to the library and go digital instead of having, it's just like legal work. When I first went and started practicing, we had one office that had nothing but Southern Reporters and digests and books, and now it's all on a disc. Or you go to you go to Westlaw or something. So you teach them how to read.
yeah, I mean the world is dramatically different, and it's only going to continue to be. With this whole metaverse concept, and I mean, it's some. Again, we got a lot of discussions about how it impacts all of us as society. But what are your thoughts moving forward with an education system for the future? Like,
well, let me just say, just add here that we have a virtual school program. So we've addressed that from that standpoint, realizing that there are...
If nothing else, you were forced to.
Right.
Yeah.
Realize there are students here. And I believe there are kids in our school system who, they're going to succeed without us. I mean, because they are motivated to do that kind of research and those types of things. Obviously, the concern is for assessment and accountability. We have to be held accountable for every dime we spend in education as it relates to, progress. And so some of these options, you have to be concerned about the assessment part, okay?
Right.
You go online, you Khan Academy or any other site, and you take a few, tests and whatever, and you score 100, yay. But how are you able to apply that in real life as it relates to what we've been talking about earlier in regards to, career tech education and preparing for an industrial world. So our virtual school program allows those students the opportunity to take some of their classes virtually, online. Yeah. But there are certain kids, of course, who don't need to be left at home by themselves.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we're advancing from that standpoint. Our dual enrollment is also allowing a level of advancement for those students as well. So that's what we're working on. And now one of my latest ventures, our latest venture is a program that we're calling Grace Academy. That's GRACE, Gadsden Rehabilitative Alternative Center for Education. Okay. We're recognizing that there are some school children who just don't perform well in large environments.
Right.
There are students who have mental health issues. Students have anger issues. We want to educate those kids. We want those kids, as opposed to being the ones who get in trouble in school for violating rules and then having to stay home for 10 days with no supervision in many cases. We want to place them somewhere else in our school system, and we have alternative school program for that. We have in-school suspensions for that, but that's all punitive.
Right.
We want to just, if at all possible, eliminate the notion that a child is being penalized, okay?
Right.
It's okay for them to be isolated in a different area here, but we don't know what contributes to that behavior that they're being punished for, realizing that when they're away from the regular school environment, they're losing instructional time. Yep. So we're working towards improving that right now.
One of the things that I do want to add before we do get gone is one of the things Mr. Reddick has tried to do, and he's only been there like a year longer than the new board has. Okay, so we're all doing this learning curve. Is over the last year or so I
wouldn't say 34 years is a massive learning curve.
It is when you're sitting at the head of the class and you're the one riding this. You're the one driving this.
Gotcha.
So, but he has tried and is putting together a team. We got Mrs. Farabee, who is our new. What's the title?
Director of Curriculum Instruction.
Director of Curriculum. Yeah. Then we've got Keith Blackwell, who's his right hand man, who basically is in the trenches every day when he sends him in whatever direction he needs to go. And then Corey Skelton is our CFO, our Chief Financial Officer, who does the books and every month sits down and goes over it dollar for dollar for where we're shortcomings there are, and where our money's coming from, and what we how bad things are, how good things are.
Right.
And then we've got Mr. Gulledge. Give me his title.
He's accountability, school improvement and accountability.
He's put together. And when we've had the board, and this is a lot of things, and a lot of folks don't see the day-to-day operation of it, where we've had meetings with the principals of the schools, especially the high schools, saying, where are we duplicating services? Where are we doing this that we're spending more time and more money on less students that we could put to get? We're looking at long-range plans to try to save every dollar and stretch it that we can get our hands on.
And I think that concept you talk about, duplication of effort and all that kind of stuff. And I think we'll save it for another day, because I think we've been going long enough, but I definitely think, and this isn't just the education system, but we as a county need to have the discussions of the duplication of effort of just government, right? We've got 3 school systems, which means we've got to pay 3 superintendents. And, I'm sure you're busy, but, would a guy like you be able to manage a little bit more? And does that free up more dollars to dedicate to other things? Again, and I've said, I can't remember if I said it while we were live, and I've said it multiple times as kind of a military strategic planner, and looking at if I've got an area this big,
government,
right? I'm not going to go in and put this many generals in, because all the generals have got to have staffs. And then the staffs have got to have, and so by the time you go through all the resources, and I think everybody will recognize, like, that's not something, that's, I think, a discussion that we need to have as a community as we move forward long term, maybe as part of that discussion of a development of a master plan as a county, and getting everybody on board with that, and maybe that ends up being a generational thing. Maybe the next guy figures that out. Who knows? But I think it's definitely something that we need to think about. The flip side of that is understanding that what already currently exists, you're working together, you're talking to each other. So it's not like you completely, live, so my point is not necessarily that you could accomplish more. It's that, I guess it would be, you would accomplish more because you could free up resources. Either that, or you could reduce our taxes so we don't have to spend as much money to achieve the same goal. Hey, it's America. Nobody's talking about dropping taxes. I get that, and that's a can of worms that
another day.
I don't know that I want to jump into. Let me see. I think we've covered most. Somebody asked, is the SPAN program the alternative school?
No. Can I answer now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The SPAN program is separate from the alternative school. No, we did house the SPAN program at our old Gadsden High School for a number of years, but last year they moved to a different location. But that's a little bit different program than alternative school. Our alternative school students continue to work towards a credential. In the SPAN program, they're basically designed to bring students up to snuff, academically, and with the possibility of moving back into the regular school to earn a credential, but it's not a credential issuing program. Not like a high school diploma credential. Now, they probably get a certificate of some sort.
Gotcha.
Kevin Blackwell does a fantastic job with that program.
Okay. And then, and I think we kind of covered this at one point. It was mentioned, but the question of why has Gadsden City lost enrollment?
Well, that's an ongoing question, but schools around the state of Alabama have lost enrollment to the tune of 10,000 students. Now, if we want to look at Gadsden City specifically, we've got to take into account that Goodyear Tire and Rubber is no longer with us here, and we lost the steel industry 25 years ago as well. Certainly, teachers not teachers, but parents, exercise their parental choice and live outside of our school district to go elsewhere. I think a lot of emphasis has been on, how well we perform academically, athletically, and so on. We deal with that every day. Okay?
Right.
So no, it's not any unusual loss. As a matter of fact, the number is about 78 students right now at the high school, and a lot of that loss is at the elementary and preschool level. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Kindergarten is not compulsory. Kindergarten don't have to come to school basically by law.
Right.
So during the pandemic, there were a lot of parents who chose to keep their kindergarten and younger students at home. So that's where that loss is coming from.
Well, and I'm assuming, I'm not going to go out on too big of a limb here, but there's probably some correlation to the fact too that Etowah County, for at least a decade now, has had a steady decline in just the simple population.
Absolutely. Now this won't go into effect for another 6 years or so, but we understand that the death rate due to COVID has outpaced the birth rate nationwide. So,
which I think is something we were already challenged with in America is our people have chosen to have less kids than our parents and grandparents. So that is a
well, it's kind of like
it sounds like you're definitely being thoughtful about the practical applications of are we is it something you're necessarily doing wrong? That's okay. Well, I think that's most of it, guys. We've been on for an hour and 15 minutes, so I don't want to take any more of your time. I'm extremely appreciative of you gentlemen taking the time to come over here. I know you've got a lot on your plate. And so there's a lot more to discuss, and I want to encourage folks, get out there and get educated. The whole reason I'm having these conversations is because I want to be more educated. I just happen to be able to turn a camera on and hook up to the internet. There's a lot that we have to learn. We talked about before we came on. I feel like we as a nation, not just as Etowah County, there's a lot of folks, particularly in my generation, in the 40s and the 30-year-olds that kind of go, well, my parents have always been on the board, or, that's the school system just runs itself. I think we're seeing that across the board. And I think there's a lot of us that are going, ooh, wait a second. I'm supposed to be, it's one thing when I get it. I got to spend time with my 6-year-old. I got to spend time with my 8-year-old. I got to spend time with my 12-year-old and helping them, at home and all that kind of stuff. But there does come that point to why the judge is doing what he's doing that you go, all right, that board of education, especially now that we've got it by election, if that's your passion, and if there's change, I love in the military, it's always don't necessarily bring up a problem if you ain't got a solution. So jump in there and come be a part of those solutions. Of course, the bare minimum in that solution is your kids, your involvement with your kids, spending time, with them. Don't send the kids to school to ask them to raise your children, and that's certainly a tough, uncomfortable conversation for a lot of folks. But thank you, guys. Maybe we can have some further discussions with the county. I think one other big thing is a discussion with the workforce development relationship with Gadsden State, and maybe we need to see about.
One other thing I did want to throw in it, didn't when you said it when you said Gadsden State, I'm on one other board besides the school board, and I intend on being one more time for the school board, and I'm going to give it up. But I was given the privilege here a while back to join Darden's rehab's board, and they work in conjunction with the school system.
That's right.
For those young folks over there to train them and to help them with job placement and those type things.
Absolutely.
And it is so rewarding.
Well, if nothing else, for those folks that'll sit out an armchair quarterback, especially as we went through the pandemic, what you guys have been through, whether you agree or disagree, it's easy to sit at home and throw stones. But I don't think, I hope everybody understands, no matter what your opinion on the actions that have been taken, there's a lot on your plate, and a remarkably more, a bigger portion over the last couple of years in navigating something that most of us in America have never thought about. Certainly not in the modern age. And so I would say I'm extremely appreciative and fully recognize that you don't have a small task. And I know that unfortunately we live in a world where, as particularly on the internet, people can, I do that, well, okay, and I'm not, that's good. And hopefully we have these discussions, learn more, understand more about the things, the challenges that you guys are dealing with. And it sounds like you guys are willing to listen and communicate with the community, which is another big theme that we've had over the last year in the open, open communication. And that's, and that's, I'll sum it up with back to being a parent to your kid. I'll say it over and over and over again. The leadership for our community starts with you guys, starts with the voters, starts with us putting in the work to figure out what's going on, to understand more than the headlines, to get more than one line deep. There's a lot of guys around here that are running for election that we're all friends, we're all acquaintances, a bunch of people that all grew up together. And I think that's the conversation we need to have, is that doesn't necessarily qualify you to be the right person to be able to come in and impact something like a school district. So with that, the one thing I'm doing, I'm building a web page out there. If you go to advancedetowah.com, you go to election 2022, who's running. I'm building out profiles for everybody that's running, including people that are running in the education side, both at the state, state level and the Board of Education. And we'll try to get the information to try and make it easy, because I get it. We're all busy. It's tough to be involved sometimes. So, but the onus is still on us as the citizens, to put forth the true leadership in who we elect. Because if we don't put the effort in and we elect people that aren't good leaders, that aren't thoughtful, that don't know what they're doing, then we get what we deserve. So thank you guys for coming on. And I hope this has been beneficial to everybody out there. And we will we'll catch you on the next one. Love to have conversation in the comments moving forward. So, and again, share it up, and hopefully somebody learned something today. So.